What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another video, and this time we're going to go over the auction over at LCG Auctions. They had a lot of incredible, very high-grade vintage Kenner Star Wars items, as well as some foreign stuff that I wanted to go through. And I just picked a snapshot here of about 20 or so items, 25 items that sold. Early prototypes, double telescoping saber figures, really early card backs, all very high grade. And in general, the prices, I would say, were pretty good. There were a few exceptions that came in below what I would have considered to be the fair market value for them. But I thought in general, they did a really good job, and there were some pretty incredible items in here. So let's go ahead and dig right in. The first one, and if you guys remember from my preview video for this auction, this is one I did highlight. This was a first shot prototype Ben Kenobi that was hand painted with a custom kind of early cape, and it also had an early saber. So this was a very rare prototype, and only 4 known examples. This one is the far rarer than the rocket firing Boba Fett, and you know, it's certainly never going to command rocket firing Boba Fett prices just because of the lore and kind of the history of the rocket firing Fett. But this was a hand painted hands, face, and sculpt, and this was, you know, just basically a very early production figure. Evidence of beeswax or adhesive under the foot, likely used to keep him in position during a photo shoot on display at a toy fair. So when they were first designing the figures, this was kind of one of the early ones. And so it was a pretty incredible item, one of only 4 that exists. And it sold for almost $30,000. And I believe all of these prices I'm quoting you include the buyer's premium that you have to pay at different auction houses. I think the buyer's premium at LCG Auctions is about 20%. So just keep all that in mind when you bid next time on the next session. But about $30,000 for a pretty incredible 1 of 4 prototype. This was a cool one. This was a kind of a custom encased CAS example where they took the double telescoping saber figures, Ben Kenobi, Luke, and Darth Vader, and they put them all in one case. And it's not for everybody, right? Some people don't want that, right? And I think the price reflected that. It was a CAS 80 plus Ben Kenobi, an 80 grade for the Luke, and then an 80 plus for the Vader. And it sold for $24,000, which, you know, I've seen some examples on Facebook for just the Ben Kenobi sell for more than this price. So this was a really good deal, assuming you're okay with, you know, basically it's all one big case that has the 3 figures inside. And again, some people don't want that, and clearly the price reflected that. But very, very cool item, and somebody got a pretty good deal on that. Some early card backs that sold, 12 to 20 backs. That's mostly what I'm going to be covering in here. But they were very, very high grade, and in general, the prices were pretty fair, I would say. This was a 12-back A Princess Leia. This did not have the SKU on the footer. So this is kind of the second iteration of the 12-back A. Princess Leia, AFA 85 though, very, very high grade. It sold for $6,510, big number there. Here was a 12-back B Luke Skywalker, unpunched example, AFA example, archival case, AFA 85. And that one sold for big money, $8,871. So pretty insane prices on some of these early card backs. This was a CAS 85 custom where they just included the baggies for this Cantina Adventure set. It also included the actual set, but this Sears exclusive, and it had Greedo, Blue Snags, Walrus Man, and Hammerhead, and it was graded CAS 85, and they were all kind of in one big case, very similar to the double telescoping saber figures that I just showed you. That one sold for $2,438. I would say that's a pretty fair deal. I mean, I've seen just the Blue Snags baggie in high grade go for almost $2,000. So in this case, you're getting all 3 of them for slightly, you know, about $100 more for each of the other baggies. So pretty good deal there. Next up was a Harbert Garastellari, mi dispiace, AFA 85, 12-back Stormtrooper. So beautiful Italian card, and this price was a steal. $1,558 for an AFA 85 Stormtrooper on the Harbert 12-back. To me, that is a really good bargain. I don't follow these Harberts too closely, but to me, that seems like a really good deal for an AFA 85, unpunched. No price sticker on that one. Next up was a 12-back C R2-D2. This one was punched, and this one also did have the harder defined 32 back sticker on there. So a lot of these kind of overstock 12 backs, they slapped the 32 back stickers on them as the Empire Strikes Back figures were being released. So a little tougher to find this one versus just the straight 12 back C. This is the 12 back C with the 32 back sticker. So a much tougher one to track down. It was an AFA 80. Again, punched example, no price sticker, and that one sold for $15.96, which I think is pretty much in line. I mean, I've seen some 12-back, just regular 12-back Cs sell for that much in an AFA 80. So I think to get the harder to find one with the 32-back sticker on there for about the same price, I think is a pretty good deal. Next up was a 12-back C Han Solo small head, and this one was an AFA 85. That one sold for $3,763 and change. So pretty big price on that one as well. That one was also an unpunched example, no price sticker. Here was that 12 action figure store display plus the bin. So again, I showed this in my preview video. They basically had these bins at point of sale displays in retail, and inside would be 12 backs for the brand new Star Wars action figures from Kenner. And this one sold for $4,554. It was graded AFA 80. Obviously, just given the size of that thing, you'd have to have some display space for it, but pretty cool display there, all AFA graded, AFA 80. Here is a beautiful 21 back B Boba Fett, AFA 85, unpunched, as good as it gets. And that one came in below what I was expecting. I think the last one at Hakes, don't quote me on this, was kind of in that $15,000 to $18,000 range. And that's kind of what I figured the number would be. It was right around 15 maybe, given the declining market. I think last year it was kind of more like 18 to 20. This one sold for $13,789. So that's well down versus even where the one sold for on Hakes in the last auction, I believe. Again, I'm going on memory. I didn't double check that, but I know that one recently sold on Facebook last year for about 18. This one sold for $13,789. So pretty big drop, but you know, as you'd expect, some of these high-end collectibles have definitely come down in price a little bit relative to their all-time highs during the pandemic. Next up, I thought this was a pretty good deal as well. This was a yellowed blister 75 grade Bespin 3-pack. So this is the special action figure set with Han Bespin, the Ugnaught, and Lobot. It was yellowed, but pretty awesome item, and always tough to track down these special action figure sets. That sold for $2,074. That's kind of a number that I would think would have been higher, but I think maybe the yellow blister probably held the price back just a little bit. But interesting sale there. Next up was the Slave 1. This was graded CAS 80. So this is a mint and seal box Slave 1 first release. That sold for $2,827. Again, a number that is well down versus some of the highs we saw even, you know, 6 to 9 months ago. There was an AFA 75 that sold for $3,300. That was many months ago, but it was during this year. And now this one's a CAS 80. You could probably equate the two. AFA 75, 75 plus is probably about the same as a CAS 80. And that one sold for $28.27. So very interesting sale as well. Here was another 20 back. This is the, I'm going to get into the 20 backs now. We got the Luke X-Wing, AFA 85, as good as it gets there. That one sold for big money, $17.55. Pretty big number there, but probably about right, honestly. I mean, AFA 80s sell for like $1,100, $1,200, $1,300 maybe. So $17.55 for an AFA 85 is probably about right. Next up, this one came in well higher than I was expecting. This was a 20-back G AFA 85 R5D4. It was unpunched, and it was about as good as it gets. I mean, that's a beautiful example. And I was kind of expecting maybe $1,500 to $1,600. This one sold for $19.30. So big number, but certainly a beautiful example for the R5D4 on the 20-back G. This is the Hammerhead 20-back D, AFA 85, $17.55. So, you know, I think the big surprise to me is that in general, a lot of the 20-backs with the rocket-firing Boba Fett offer on the front, a lot of those came in a little bit higher than I was personally expecting. And that's just me. You know, I don't follow the 20-backs very closely. But, you know, Chris over at Rogue 5 Toys, he did sell a CAS 85 20-back Greedo, and it was big money. I mean, it was a lot of money. So, you know, that's just kind of, I think in my mind, I kind of equate the 20 backs to maybe the 21 backs offerless, but it's not the case. I mean, the 20 backs definitely go for quite a bit more money. Here was another 20 back C Greedo. This one sold for $676, AFA 85. That was a really good number there. And I think the price was held down a little bit on that one because it was punched, but That was well below what I was expecting. And that was an AFA 85 for the Greedo. And again, Chris sold one very similar to this. I believe his was unpunched and it was straight 85s, but it was quite a bit more expensive than this one. But very good deal there on that Greedo, I feel like. Next up was a 20-back H unpunched Walrus Man AFA 85. That one sold for $15.96, kind of in line with the Hammerhead. Here was the Snaggletooth. I was really shocked by this price, and maybe you guys can fill me in as to why this one sold so high. It was an AFA 85, but it was a punched example. So again, I was kind of expecting this one to fall in line with the Walrus Man and the Hammerhead of maybe $1,500 or so, but it sold for $3,421. So very big number there for the 20-back G red snags. Much higher than I was expecting, especially because it was punched. So just a little bit of a surprise on the upper end there. This one kind of sold back in line with the Hammerhead and some of the others. This is the 20-back G Power Droid. That one was an AFA 85 as well. So whoever commissioned these had just a beautiful collection of 20 backs and 12 backs, and they all sold for kind of right around the same price with a few exceptions. This one sold for $15.96. The 20-back G Death Star droid sold for $9.90. That was an unpunched example, no price sticker, AFA 85. I thought that was a particularly good deal. I think I've got the 20-back G AFA 80 Plus or somewhere in that ballpark. And I paid not much less than this on Facebook. So $9.90 for that one I thought was a really great deal, given that it was a slightly higher grade than the one in my collection. So really good deal on that one as well. Next up, here's another good deal. This was a clear blister 31-back A Han Hoth CAS 80. And if I'd been on top of my game, I probably would have bid on this, but I just was distracted with too much going on last night. It sold for $424. That's the debut card for Han Hoth. Now, it did have the ugly Toys R Us price sticker in the upper right, and it was a punched example, but it was a CAS 80, and the subscores were 80, 85, 80. But that number was significantly below what I was expecting. I was expecting probably close to $600 to $800 minimum on this one. So someone got another really good deal. Now you could argue that because the tape that was holding the blaster had kind of come loose, and it definitely just detracts from it. If you look at it from the front, having that tape kind of like splayed out there, it does kind of detract from it aesthetically. And so you could see that holding the price down a little bit, but $424 is a bargain either way. That's a number I would have paid all day long. And again, if I had been on top of my searches, I probably would have bid on that one. Next up was a 32-back B debut card for Yoda. This one did have a small Kmart sticker, but it was unpunched, and it was an AFA 80. And again, that one sold for $910. And there was an AFA 80 or 80 Plus that sold on eBay for like $1,600. So to get this one for $910, that's a pretty significant price difference and a really good deal there, I think, for an AFA 80. You know, ungraded, they can go $500 to $600 or so in similar condition. So, you know, to get one already graded for $910 relative to some of the prices we've seen on eBay lately. And that's something I've been preaching, right, on some of my market updates is don't buy a Yoda 32B graded. If you're willing to live with a little bit of grading risk and you want a graded example, you can get an ungraded one and then see, you know, roll the dice with AFA or CAS and see how it comes back. But, you know, there is some nice certainty to getting one that's already graded. You know what it's going to get. And to get it for $910, I think that difference, that price delta between an ungraded example and this one at $910 versus like $500 or $600, that makes a little more sense. It's when you pay $1,600 like we saw in a recent market update, that's where the numbers don't make sense to me. I can't justify that big price difference, but I could see that for $910. $910, it kind of makes sense to jump in there and get it for that. Next up, we've got a Kenner Canada 77-back A Stormtrooper CAS 80 Plus clear blister as well. That one sold for $424. That was another really good bargain there for a foreign card back. So you can see the back there. It's got the La Guerre des Étoiles, French language. So I think for a clear blister 77-back Stormtrooper CAS 80 Plus for $424, that is a bargain. There's no way you could touch that price on eBay. So really good deal. So there were some good deals out there in this auction. You had to pick and choose your battles, but some of them sold well higher than I expected, and others like that one I just showed you, and that 31-back A Han Hoth, those came in well below expectations. Here was a CAS 80 Plus R2-D2 pop-up, yellow blister, obviously, for the Power of the Force line. It did have some sticker residue in the upper right. That one sold for $1,000. That's another price delta where, you know, ungraded, you might pay that much on eBay, or maybe, you know, 800 bucks or so, 900 bucks. So again, this is a good example where, let's say you're only an AFA collector. Well, are you willing to be only an AFA collector when you're paying $1,800 for an AFA 80 plus, or will you take a CAS 80 plus for $1,000? That's the question. So there are some people out there that only collect AFA, and that's probably why the price was held down a little bit. But to me, I'm perfectly happy with a CAS 80 plus R2D2 pop-up for $1,000 versus paying close to double that price that I've seen, at least on Hakes, for the same item in the same grade from AFA. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this auction look from LCG. I thought they did a pretty good job. Again, some items came in well above expectations. Some of them did not, which is kind of the par for the course, right? We see the same thing at Hakes and even on eBay. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.